In this video, we're going to learn how to create a DAX measures table to help organize and clean up the calculations that we have in our Power BI report. Now, as a reminder, coming up here to our sales table on the right, we'll see that we have a bunch of DAX calculations, or more specifically, 3 calculations, which is average order amount, order count, and total sales. And they're kind of organized in the alphabetical order and without any real way to organize them or search by them functionally within Power BI desktop. So what we're going to learn how to do is create a so-called folder that will hold these in the data model and allow us to organize them much more effectively. So to do that, I'm going to come up to the top page here under the home ribbon, and there's a button in here called Enter Data. So I'm going to select that, and this will pop up a window. Now there's a lot of other use cases that this will have coming down the road, and other things you might encounter in the future, such as disconnected tables, and other things that we'll get to in later videos, and even in other video modules. But for now, we're going to keep this simple and clean, and all I'm going to do is come down here to the bottom and name this DAX Measures. And I'm going to hit the load button. Perfect. If we come back to our fields list, we'll see that we have kind of an empty table with that column, single column without any data in it, that's created over here. Now what we can do with all of these DAX calculations to see how this works, if we select anything, let's say to start with, we use average order amount. So I'm going to select that, and just like we would be editing this in any way, we can come up to the home ribbon up here, go to modeling, and here's where we did the formatting in our last video, just as a reminder. But over here on the right, there's another section called Properties. And in that section is something called the Home Table. Now, if I hit the down arrow here, I do have the option to choose a table that this resides in. Remember, we can do this because this is a calculation that has no physical column anywhere. It's just using the sales table right now as a placeholder. So if I select DAX Measures, now take a look over at the right. You'll see that it has moved it into the Measures table, out of my sales table. And I can do the same thing with order count. I'm going to select that, come up to my home table and move that as well to that. And then lastly, I will do that as well for my total sales. Select it, come up to the home table, move that to DAX Measures. Perfect. I've now moved all 3 of them into my DAX Measures table. Now to further organize this and kind of separate this from my tables and columns to really identify that these are virtual calculations and not just data that is sitting physically in my model, there's a little trick that you can do that changes a few properties that really makes this stand out. So let's come up here and right click on column 1 and let's select delete. And I do want to delete column 1. Now here's where the trick comes into play. I'm going to collapse my fields list, kind of wave the magic wand, 1, 2, 3, open it back up. Now you see what that just did? It has now taken the DAX Measures table, it's put it at the top of my fields list, and more importantly, it has added a calculator symbol next to it. So now what that means is that anytime a table has all of its columns either A, hidden, or it's completely empty, like what we did in terms of deleting that column, it will change this icon to a calculator icon to symbolize that this is now a calculation table. And it sorts it separately, alphabetically, at the top. If I had 1, 3, or 5 measures tables, depending on how many calculations I've created, those are sorted separately at the top. And then secondly, below them, all of the normal tables like channel, geography, etc., those are sorted alphabetically then below it. So it's a really nice way to separate that physical layer in your data model with the virtual layer, which is those calculations that don't really exist unless you put them inside of a visualization or a table. And the best part is it's fairly easy to set up and pretty quick just to go ahead and start throwing those in there. And that will be about it for this video. It's a short and sweet practice that's great to implement, and I put it in all of my data models whenever I create a data model in Power BI. And there's even ways to do it in Excel as well, with a couple of other tricks with Power Query. In our next video, we're going to wrap up our DAX section by creating a couple more calculations and finishing off a few things to allow us to achieve that net profit calculation that we're aiming for.